Black Widow finally, and I must emphasize, finally came out in the theaters. And the film, of course, for those of you who somehow don't know, this film takes place in between the events of Captain America Civil War and Avengers Infinity War. And it follows Natasha Romanoff, a.k.a. Black Widow, as she fights to take down the Red Room, the secret organization that kidnapped her when she was younger and forcibly trained her into a killer. The film stars Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh, David Harbour, and Rachel Weisz. Darius, you and I went to see this together with a couple of buddies of ours. What did you think of this one?
Yeah, to be honest, for me, I kind of walked out heavily mixed because there are elements I really liked, and there, to me, it really felt as if the first 25-30 minutes, I was like, yes, this is cool, I'm liking it, this is great, it feels different, it looks a bit different, and then it kind of went into the rabbit, and then it kind of just went downhill for me. I think like some of the pacings later on in the movie completely just it felt rushed in areas. There's a reveal that I wasn't too fond of and I wasn't happy about on multiple levels. I came out mixed, if not heavily disappointed. And this was a MCU film I was really excited for, because to me it's about time she had her own movie. It felt as if they're taking inspiration from Winter Soldier, Captain America Winter Soldier, and when I say inspiration, I mean heavily inspiration from that movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I wasn't a big fan of it. I think they could have done more. The solid first act, like that first act, I thought was really solid, was really strong. It really made me be like, okay, this could be something. But then it started to feel like every other MCU movie, and I'm not trying to say it's a bad thing, but at the same time, it's like that tonal shift was just so drastic and such a huge thing from that first act to a bit later that to me I was just underwhelmed, and I was like, that you could have done more. Not too fond with how you handle certain elements of certain reveals and even the third act, like to the point where I was honestly kind of becoming numb at that point in the film. Considering that this is a 2-hour 14-minute film, this felt short to me and didn't feel as quite finished in certain areas, including certain VFX departments. But other than that, again, for me, I was underwhelmed. I was kind of heavily disappointed, and I expected and I wished for more. So.
I definitely, overall, this was, at the very least, a good time. I'm not 100% sure if it was worth, like, all the delays. I mean, when it comes to, like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe films, like, these aren't, unless it's, like one of the Avengers movies, like, the vast majority of, like, the single films, as much as I enjoy watching them while I'm watching them, they're not usually films I anticipate too heavily. Like, Dune as a film, I'm really anticipating. Black Widow wasn't really the case as much. Like, anytime I heard about Black Widow getting delayed, I'm like, all right, that sucks. But when I heard about Dune getting delayed like almost a year, I'm like, fuck. But again, going back to Black Widow, I mean, I guess I didn't go into it waiting for it, really expecting too much, because at the end of the day, I felt this before I started watching the film, and I felt like this after watching the film. Black Widow would have been so much more impactful if it came out before Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
Because as much as this movie definitely has a lot going for it. There are a few things that definitely weigh it down, but there is a decent amount that this movie has going for it. But to at least build into some of the points that this movie does have going for it, there are the cast alone, the 4 main cast members that I mentioned at the beginning of this review. They all do a good job. Scarlett Johansson, she's fine. She doesn't really bring anything new to the role in terms of her acting, but as far as like Natasha Romanoff's backstory overall, that's really put on full display in that opening act and those opening credit scenes, which I thought was a particularly great montage. I love that rendition of Smells Like Teen Spirit. Really put into a lot of perspective as far as like what she's been through, the traumatic events that she's been through. But I gotta say the standout of the entire film was Florence Pugh as her quote sister, Yelena Belova. She's absolutely hilarious. She's very witty. She's got a very dry sense of humor, but at the same time, there are a lot of scenes where she's actually very emotionally effective. So props to her. Rachel Weisz is fine, but like, she's kind of there. She's like the quote mother figure. Like, again, she does what she has to do, not really much else. And David Harbour, as Alex said, the quote father figure. He was really funny. He was a great comic relief. But the more that I really think about what he actually did in the movie, like the character and stuff, like what he actually did, he wasn't very useful for the team at all.
No,
right? Is it just me?
No, that's exactly where I felt. Yeah.
That was such a waste.
It's such a waste because it's like, I like Red Guardian as a character from the comics. And when I heard David Harbour, I was like, okay, cool. I like him. I think he can do a good job. But then as I'm starting to watch the movie, I was like, oh, he's just a regular MCU comic relief. And that's where, to me, it kind of went downhill a bit. I mean, it kind of went downhill a bit before then, but even still, I was just like, like, are you just gonna be dumb this entire time, or like it was just...
honestly, yeah. And again, like I said, that's why it's such a wasted potential, because he has some awesome power, and I think that he, in a lot of ways, could have been a very redemptive character. Because like again, like there's like the beginning of the film where they kind of show him like being a good protector, a solid protector of his quote family, right? Because how the story starts is that Natasha's quote family was a ploy by the Soviet Union to infiltrate the U.S., which again, that part of the backstory, I thought that was really cool. But then you have David Harbour's character again being the sort of protector, which again, like, served really well. But then fast forward a couple decades, he spends a couple decades in jail, and he's a bumbling idiot. He's fucking useless. He's practically useless. He has this amazing power behind him, this amazing potential as a character, and they wasted him. And again, I don't think that's so much, that's more the writing for the film. David Harbour, again, like performance-wise, acting-wise, he did fine. He did really, really great. Like I said, he was a great comic relief. Like, I at least believed him. But as far as like his character, like it was a waste. It was really such a waste. And what'd you think of the villain, Dreykov? Because he's like the head of the Red Room. He was fine, but like he's not really memorable. Like he joins like the long list of Marvel Cinematic Universes that really just aren't memorable. They're really just expendable, if anything.
Yeah, honestly, I forgot the villain until you mentioned it.
So that answers my question.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't. Even to the villain, to me, this really felt as if they were trying to push the theme of the movie more than some of the character development, and this is where it also kind of fumbled a bit, because it's like, yes, I like the theme you're going for, but at the same time, it was like, this kind of just feels forced in a certain way where it felt unnecessary. And I thought that there could have been a more interesting way to do either the villain, a mission of the villain, and how he ties into a certain another villain at the same time. And I was a bit mixed on that. I don't really care about Dreykov. He's just whatever. Like, I really don't care about that. Him as a villain per se. Honestly, he was a pretty, like you said, they're expendable. Like they bring a villain in there and then they toss him out or whatever and that sort of thing. Whereas in this movie, I think it would have been more effective to use the other character, Taskmaster, more than this higher head, whatever you want to call it. Like I said, I started getting numb at that point.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like who Taskmaster actually is, like I didn't have a problem with that reveal and like that sort of connection to like everybody, to like the guy that's running the show. Yeah. But just like as a villain overall, like I'm gonna forget about Dreykov in a week. I only remembered him for this review, and that's about it. But I think in terms of like the aftermath, like the resolution, and we went to go see this with our buddy William, and he made a great point too. Like it could have been longer and it could have had more impact. And I gotta agree with him. So when you talk about the certain pacing issues for this movie, I definitely understand that, particularly with the end. But it's weird, like even throughout like a big chunk of the movie, like the act 2, I guess you'd say, it felt a bit long, and I don't know for sure if that's just in part because I had to pee about 30 minutes into the film. But I don't know. It's weird. Like I look back on this movie, and even though I don't know what exactly I would cut out, I'm still looking back on this. I'm like, I'm